What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. We are 10 days away from the Patriots kicking off their regular season for 2022 down in Miami. And we have plenty to talk about here. We have to talk about the 53-man roster, which has been set for now. It's the initial 53, not the final 53. They will be sure to tell you that down in Foxborough. We also have a full practice squad, 16 players on the P squad complement as of right now. It's a large group, but we can talk about some of those players as well. And we have our buddy Matt Cassel in to talk about all things audibling. Wrote a little bit about that earlier this week. We've been talking about it all week on TV, on the radio as well. Mac Jones, he will have more power at the line of scrimmage when the regular season begins. He didn't have all that much through the summer. And that's part of the reason, my understanding is, why the offense looked the way it did at times, really for the vast majority of the summer. So how will things look now that the games mean something? How often can Mac Jones actually change the plays? And will everybody else be ready for it? These are all topics that we get to with Cassel. We're watching a little film with Cassel as well. So if you're with us on YouTube, you'll be able to see what we are talking about via some of the all 22 clips that we have. So great stuff from Cassel as always. But let's get right to our 53-man roster discussion. Let's talk about some surprises. Number one being that there really weren't any surprises. And that's what I anticipated. It's what I had heard going into the 53 cutdown day from people who would know there weren't going to be any earth-shattering types of releases. And that really was the case. Anytime Justin Bethel, God bless him, really good special teams player. I liked covering him a lot here while he was here in New England. But anytime he has an argument as maybe the most surprising release, when you get down to 53, that's a good indication of the fact that there were no shockers here. Terrence Mitchell as well, he's out, while Jack Jones, who I thought had a great summer, one of the best summers of any rookie on this roster, really clearly told the team, yeah, I'm going to be on the roster because I'm a fourth-round pick, but I can give you something as well. Even if he's not necessarily starting out of the chutes, he can contribute. I think Terrence Mitchell was here as sort of a stopgap. And if things looked rough for some of those younger players, whether it was Jack Jones or Marcus Jones, who flashed at times as well, real ability in the slot, then maybe he would still be here. But again, Terrence Mitchell, Justin Bethel, Devin Asiasi. Now, there was some thinking in the building at One Patriot Place that because they would like to have some insurance at that tight end position, that Devin Asiasi would have a shot of sticking around. But he really didn't have a special teams role, a significant one at least. And he just really did not have a very good summer. I really felt as though his hands were not consistent. He wasn't always where he was expected to be out on the practice field when he was expected to be in certain places. And so I think the Patriots probably felt as though there was a decent shot they would be able to get him through waivers because he hadn't shown anything in the regular season now that he's into his third year here, and very little in these preseason games. He didn't even play in the finale as he was dealing with a minor lower body injury. But they weren't able to do that. The Cincinnati Bengals had a real need at tight end, so they scoop him up. They will try him out. Who knows? Maybe he'll be released by Cincinnati when they settle on a top 2 or 3 at that position, and the Patriots will be able to bring him back on the practice squad. I certainly would leave that possibility open. But right now, your backup tight ends are Jalen Windemeyer and Matt Sokol. Both of those guys ended up landing on the practice squad. I think one other note that's worth pointing out is the fact that J.J. Taylor was released. On its face, not a huge surprise, again, but I think it does suggest that the Ty Montgomery injury, which looked serious, it looked significant, being there in Vegas when he went down, when you see a guy get onto a cart, number one, but B, even before that, completely unable to put weight onto his right leg after dealing with that ankle injury, and then getting the send-off that he got from his teammates, it's an emotional scene anytime you see that. But padding on the helmet, padding on the shoulder pads, it's rare that you see that too. And it's usually reserved for injuries that are pretty serious. And maybe the team thought it was at the time, but he has not yet, as of this recording, been placed on injured reserve. And so to me, between him not landing on IR and JJ Taylor not being kept, although he was kept as part of the practice squad, that tells me that we will see Ty Montgomery at some point this year, which if you asked me after that Vegas game, I would have said it doesn't look very good as far as that goes. There'll be more updates to the roster coming here. Tyquan Thornton, we think, will be headed to IR soon here if he hasn't been already at the time you're listening to this, which will open up a spot on the 53 for someone else. But the practice squad, I will give to you right now. It's Cam McGrone, Harvey Lange, Terrence Mitchell, Jeremiah Farms, Brad Hawkins, and LeBrian Ray, who was a little bit of a surprise. He didn't make the 53 to me, but he's an undrafted rookie. They decided to keep Sam Roberts, the D2 sixth-round pick that they made this year. They probably felt as though they only had a spot for one of those guys. They were able to get Ray back on the practice squad. Good for them. Offensively, you have Trey Nixon, Lil Jordan Humphrey, who I think maybe surprised some people that he wasn't kept. But it was really the one preseason game that he had where he flashed and he gave you that great special teams play. He has not really been working in a tight end the way he told us he was in Las Vegas when I asked him about it. During those joint practices, I asked Nick Caley as a follow-up. He said he's not really in our meetings, but he does have some responsibilities that are tight end-like as an inside receiver. Anyway, he's released. He comes back as part of the practice squad. Kevin Harris, the running back, the rookie out of South Carolina, is back on the P squad. We mentioned J.J. Taylor and Sokol and Weidermeyer. James Ferentz also back on the practice squad. Could certainly see him in uniform week one for the Patriots, serving as sort of the jack of all trades backup that he is. Bill Murray and Cody Russi as well, also kept around as interior offensive linemen. Like Russi a lot, I think he has a real chance to develop into something, and maybe he's the center of the future here. We know David Andrews came to New England as an undrafted rookie. Chasen Hines, I think, is worth mentioning here as well. The guard out of LSU, late round pick. He's not somebody we've talked about all that much on Next Pets, but he earns a roster spot. And I think that's probably on account of a couple different factors. Number one, when he was out there, they liked what they saw. That's my understanding. He does give them some power on the interior, which you don't often see coming with guys from the college ranks. There's just not that many players who have that kind of run game ability and run game experience that he has. So that's a check mark in his favor. He did miss a good chunk of the summer, though. And so this would be one way, just in case there's another team out there that also liked Hines as a potential day 3 pick, to say, let's give him some more time and let's see what he can do now that he has his feet under him. Now that we're through camp, he has been on the field for a few weeks here. Even though he missed some time, let's see what he can do and see if he can stack some days and give us some real versatile interior offensive line help on game days, because that really matters when it comes to who gets a uniform and who doesn't. So there's your practice squad. There's your 53-man roster. I did put out for questions for a mailbag for this week that we will hit on the website. It'll be a written bag this coming week because we have a great conversation we want to get to with Matt Cassel. But if you haven't submitted a question, hit me up on Twitter at Phil A. Perry. Leave your question there. I will see it. Hopefully it can get into the mailbag before that thing gets dropped, but that should be out on Friday. But you have plenty of time between now and then to digest this tremendous conversation with Matt Cassel. We're watching some film. We got the all 22 on. We're going over 2 plays. And again, we're talking about Mac Jones and his ability to call plays at the line. Hopefully you can check out my story at NBCSportsBoston.com about letting Mac cook in the way that he knows how to cook. A little different than how Russell Wilson, for instance, might cook. But pre-snap, let him do his thing before the snap. One of the reasons he was your first-round pick last year, one of the reasons you liked him so much, one of the reasons he ended up making a Pro Bowl as a rookie, having a great statistical rookie season relative to other rookies in recent NFL history, is because he knows how to process before the snap and after. So let the guy process. My understanding, if you haven't read the story yet, is that essentially the Patriots coaching staff wanted their offense to walk before it could run. They did not want to put too much on the plates of their new players, especially their rookie, Cole Strange, who's just trying to get his feet wet here in the NFL, making the jump from UT Chattanooga to the league. Enough on that guy's plate already. And so as a result, as they've tried to go slowly as they adapt and integrate this new offense with a new language and a new coaching staff and some new personnel, they had basically almost entirely taken the ability to audible out of Mac Jones's hands, which was different from his experience from last year and the experience for Patriots quarterbacks in general under Josh McDaniels, who never wanted a quarterback to get to the line of scrimmage and not have the ability to change the play if he felt like he had a bad play for whatever look an opposing defense was giving him. He wanted his quarterbacks to have the tools, to have the answers to the test. See a certain defense, change the play as a result. That was just something they did not do this summer for all those reasons that I mentioned. Now that the regular season is coming, that will change. We will see more of Mac Jones cooking at the line of scrimmage before the snap. The question to me is, while that will help leverage all Mac Jones's abilities as much as possible, I think that maximizes what he can do for you. Is everybody else around him ready for that? They basically have 2 weeks between their preseason finale, which we know didn't go so great, and their first regular season game. Can they, in that time, adjust to say, now we can think on our feet, on the road, in a hostile environment, and be able to keep up with whatever Mac Jones is putting down in terms of communication at the line, hand signals, verbal cues? It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot for Cole Strange. Might be a lot for Devontae Parker, who's new to the offense and new to maybe dealing with a quarterback like Mac Jones. So let's get to our conversation with Matt Cassel, because he has great insight on how all this stuff will work. And then we look at two plays in particular. One where it's a little bit of a nutshell in terms of how things went for this offense this summer in general. When they had a bad look, they had a bad play for the look that they were getting. They ran the play anyway, and the result, as you'll see, was not very good. The second play we look at, Mac Jones does make some adjustments at the line, and the play actually works out. But it's a good example of how not everyone was on the same page. And we're able to illustrate that for you with video. If you're just listening, we try to describe what we're seeing in as much detail as much as we possibly can. So hopefully you enjoy this conversation with Matt Cassel. Let's get right to it right now. All right, there he is. There's that handsome face, Matt Cassel. Welcome to the Next Pats podcast. My friend, this is not your first time on the podcast, but your first time this season. So this is a watershed moment for you, I'm sure.
It's huge. You know what? I've been having dreams about this moment, just waiting in anticipation for you just to ask me to come on for this season. And now this starts 2022, and I'm pretty fired up about it, brother.
You are fired up about it, which I can appreciate. I don't know how fired up you are about this Patriots offense in general, though. And I wanted to have you on to ask you about one aspect of the Patriots offense specifically, and that is quarterback control. I wrote a story earlier this week after having had multiple conversations with people over the course of the summer. And it's my understanding that Mac Jones will have a little bit more leeway, a lot more leeway at the line of scrimmage once the regular season begins, because he really didn't have much of it. I won't say at all, and that it was completely non-existent, his ability to, for instance, change plays at the line of scrimmage, but it was almost non-existent. He's going to be able to do more of that once they go down to Miami. Can I ask you first, in your opinion, why would it be smart for the Patriots coaching staff to say, we're not going to do any of that stuff right now, guys. We need to walk before we can run? Does that make sense to you?
It does usually make sense to me. I mean, anytime you go into an off season, right, you're installing new plays, you're installing new scheme, and you kind of see what works and what doesn't, and then what you have in terms of personnel and what your group can handle. And always when you get into preseason games, you're not throwing the kitchen sink at these guys. You're not game planning too much. You're running basic install, and you're just trying to execute at a really high level. So you slow it down for those games because, again, you don't want to put a ton of this stuff on tape. Everybody in the league right now doesn't really know what the New England Patriots offense is going to look like, what they're going to run, what their checks are. And so when you get into these preseason games, a lot of times there's more to be desired in terms of the checks at the line of scrimmage or the route patterns that are being run against certain defenses that you really say, look, this is not going to be very successful, but what do you do when that play breaks down? So there's a mindset that, particularly in preseason, look, we're just going to go out, we're going to run plays, we're going to run our basic install, and you'll have abilities to check at times, and formationally they'll set stuff up and motion guys out and give you pre-snap reads. But once you get to season, that's when you're really detailed. You're game planning against a specific opponent. You understand, like right now, the Miami Dolphins, they're putting together a game plan, and they'll have the ability, and Mac Jones will have the ability to run the check with me game, to check at the line of scrimmage, to signal at the line of scrimmage, if that's what they think is going to put them in an advantageous position to be successful.
Would that frustrate you ever in preseason as a quarterback, understanding that, hey, I know we just got to get these plays in. We got to rep these plays. It really doesn't matter what the defensive look is. We just got to get them in. But, maybe it's not going so well for you in a preseason game, for instance, and you would love to check out of a play to pick up a real gain and have a real drive and maybe put it into the end zone, but maybe you weren't allowed to. Was that ever frustrating for you? Because I think it has been for this Patriots offense at times this year. It feels like they've been waiting for the handcuffs to come off, so to speak. And now they'll have that opportunity in the regular season, but we saw them take their lumps, obviously, in August here.
Right. It was interesting because when I was going through preseason with the New England Patriots, right, you have calls that is a call and run play is what we call it, right? We're going to call it, we're going to run it against any different type of coverage. Then you have your check with me game. It could be a pass to pass, it could be a pass to run. And then there's also those times where they say alert signal. And so those signals, they are telling the wide receiver, hey, be alert for the signal. If I see something after my double cadence, then I'm going to look out there. And if it's man-to-man, I'm going to signal something that'll be to man-to-man that we've discussed and gone over. And that's was my experience even when I was young at New England going through that offensive structure. And so, yes, that absolutely can be frustrated because when you're running plays and you're going up against a defense where schematically, look, this play isn't really fit to beat this particular defense, then it can be frustrating because you're banging your head against the wall trying to, help produce something that's not really going to be there. And so you throw the ball away. And I even remember in Kansas City, sometimes we go on down in the red zone and they're playing bracket coverage, which is kind of like they're bracketing the Y, they're bracketing the X, and really you have two wide receivers. But we'd go we'd act like we're going 7-man protection and we're running 3-man routes. Well, it was awful. And I would just get so frustrated. I'd throw the ball away and do that, but they want to get it on film, see how you react. But that's what you have to do to go through the process. So yes, it can be frustrating, but you also have to understand it is a process, right? And they're trying to install as much as possible, get everybody looks at the different types of stuff that they might be doing once they get the season.
And I think one of the reasons they've tried to take it slow has been, they have some new faces in the offense in terms of veteran guys. Devontae Parker, for instance, I think is still finding his way in some ways. But then they have a guy who's completely new to pro football, who didn't play high-level college football, who's going to be starting at guard for them in Cole Strange. And I know in the past, and we've talked about how this offense is undergoing some changes, for instance, compared to when you were here under Josh McDaniels. But it's still a lot for somebody like Cole Strange, I'm sure, to be able to be up on every protection, every run play, every concept, without even having to try to figure out what's going on at the line of scrimmage if Mac Jones starts barking out signals to these guys.
Right. And that was interesting to me because really you don't base your offense on one guy, right? Even if they're a rookie, that rookie has to get caught up to speed. Right. And so when you're looking at Cole Strange himself, he's got veteran guys next to him at the center position. He's got a veteran guy that's been in that system at the left tackle position. So you can lean on those guys in terms of, hey, what do we got here? We're doubling up to the Mike backer. And there's a constant communication that takes place on the offensive line of scrimmage. And it's the offensive lines coach, which I guess is Matt Patricia's, to get him up to speed, because you're not going to base your offense just on one guy and slow everything down to the point of where you become stagnant as an offense. Instead, you want to push that guy as far as he can go, put as many protection schemes on his plate, make sure that he starts to understand that, spend extra time with him, and then go from there. So in practice, that's really where you have to see the evolution of this offense, where the check with me game, the signaling, all that stuff comes into play. Now, you might not see it in the preseason games once again, because you don't want to put it on film and let your opponent know exactly what you're probably scheming up to get after them. But in terms of practice, that's where you really got to push it and push the tempo, push all the install, and make him understand and get caught up to speed to where, because they have a veteran group. And a lot of these guys have been in the system. And as you mentioned, you have Cole Strange, you have Devontae Parker, but these guys have to get caught up to speed on terms of what they're going to be doing in regular season, because that's when it really counts.
There's just so much to get caught up on, I think is what's most interesting, and I think at times has been most problematic for this offense this summer, is
Right.
that it's not just a difference in terms of the scheme. And I've talked to multiple players who have called it a new offense. These wide zone plays, it's a lot more zone runs. These are some of these things are things that they've run in the past, but not in this way. But the language has changed too. Do you think, as somebody who has dealt with a lot of different offenses over the course of his playing career, how difficult do you think is this, and how much time, Matt, could this take for guys to really pick up on with a new language, with a new coaching staff, with a new scheme here? There are a lot of balls in the air. Is it going to take a while? Is it going to take into October, as Bill Belichick sort of alluded to recently in a press conference with us, before they start to look like the Patriots offense we saw last year at times?
It is. It's a transition. Every time you have a new play caller and you're changing scheme and you're also changing terminology, it takes guys a while to adapt to that, especially because they've become so accustomed to what we've done in New England over the last 20 years with Josh McDaniels and any of these guys that have been in the system. They understand, they have their principles, they have their belief in terms of what they're running against certain looks. And so when that changes, you got to change your mindset. And there was times and throughout my career when I went into a new system that I fought the system, and it was difficult because I'm sitting there going, why are we running this against this coverage? Because I know that I've been taught to think of it this way. But sometimes thinking outside the box and adapting to that, that's the hardest thing for some of these players to overcome within their own mind, is just getting on track with, hey, it's a new philosophy. So we have to have buy-in, and everybody's got to do it. And if you don't have buy-in and you're second guessing yourself and doubting the play call and this, that, and the other, you're going to play slow. You're going to be frustrated, and it's not going to be as successful. So everybody's got to get on the same page. They have to understand, again, that it is a process, but it could take some time, especially early on when you're seeing a bunch of different looks, to see what are our strengths of this team this year. What are those outside zones working? Is it something that we can hang our hat on and say, hey, we're going to have success. We're going to be able to get 3-4 yards per run here or break a big one. Some of these pass concepts that might be new. Is this really helping our team, or is it something that we're benefiting from, or do we need to make adjustments, simplify it, and go back to the way that we used to do it? And that's part of good coaching. That's part of being collaborative in terms of having those conversations with your players and with the coaching staff themselves.
Well, I know there is some optimism from inside the building here in Foxborough that in these 2 weeks that they've had essentially between their last preseason game and their first regular season game, as they sort of adapt and adjust to Mac Jones having more freedom at the line of scrimmage, that things will look a little bit different. We'll see. I'm with you. I think it's going to take some time, but they are optimistic. They are looking forward to how the offense could change based on how it looked in the preseason. But I want to share my screen with you, Matt Cassel, and we're going to watch some
Oh,
film.
yeah.
And I want to hear from you and your thoughts on running plays into bad looks. Because whether you talk to players, or Matt Patricia said it in a media availability period the other day, hey, sometimes these plays, they don't look as good as maybe we had hoped, but we're not running them into the best looks, is how he put it, essentially. And so I think I have an example here based on what I've heard of one instance of that. And I kind of want to get your take on it. So it might sound bad, but this is going to be the Mac Jones interception.
Mhm.
And I think this is one of those plays where the offense felt like we don't really have much of a shot here based on this look and based on our play call, but let's run it anyway and see what happens. So why to you would that be the case here? Is there anything you see for our audio listeners? We're doing this on YouTube. You can go to the YouTube link, which I have tweeted out. and you can watch along with us and see some of the images we're talking about here. But Matt, is there anything about this look from the Raiders? Or you know what? Here, first, let me just run the play.
Okay.
And then we'll rewind it and we'll see what you think. So it does look like there is a post wheel combination at the top of the screen here.
Right.
It's a
It's
play
a
action
post-wheel
fake post
play
wheel at the
action.
top.
Right. So it's 1st and 10, right? So you understand that. And then really with the way in which the Patriots like to run the ball on 1st and 2nd down, get positive yards, now they're trying to give you a play action look, right? It's a 7-man protection, sound protection. There's no hots, there's no side adjust. And so with that being said, what you're probably anticipating as a play caller is you might get some kind of post safety defense. They're in a base 3-4 defense. As you can see, they've walked out the big will linebacker over the slot. So you've got 11 personnel versus base defense. And a lot of time that means that they're going to probably be rushing. And maybe when they looked at the first few series or however it went, that they're saying 1st down, we're getting a lot of post safety defense, right? So they make this call hoping that they're going to get post safety defense. Now, look, play callers aren't perfect, and you can't get out of every play that you're at the line of scrimmage. No, not one team that I've ever been on, even when we're operating at the highest level, do you go into every game and say, hey, we're going to get ourselves in the perfect play every single time. There's not check with me's on every play. You don't have time to signal all the time. You get up, and this is a call and run play, and that's what we talked about earlier. So as you see it, you get the play action here, trying to get those defenses to suck up. But what happens is they go to a 2-high shell. It's a two high defense. So they call it cover 2 in this case, right? And so as you can see, the play action sucks up the Sam linebacker and the outside will linebacker. So when that happens, though they're committed to the run, but then as you can see late as it starts to happen, like they get back out into pass coverage. So it's a prevent defense P2 Tampa. So they got 8 guys in coverage. You've got a post wheel combination up there at the slot, which is dead versus any 2-high defense, because really it's going to take too much time. There's nothing holding off that corner up top. So he's going to continue to give depth with the wheel. The post route's dead. You've got a safety over the top there. And really what I think is that Kendrick Bourne here down at the Z that's running this, I think he's running a crossing route. So he's trying to come into the vision after it's a pure progression read, post wheel crossing route, and then down to your check downs if you're tight end and your back get out. Now, because it's cover 2, this play's dead, right? And I think Mac Jones understands it. They got fooled. And that's what happens. Sometimes you anticipate that as a play caller, and sometimes you just don't get the look that you were anticipating. So now what happens here is when Mac flushes, he knows he's off the post wheel combination. He flushes, and I think Kendrick Bourne just stops his route. He's not sitting down over the ball. He stops that crossing route and then tries to find a window for him. And as Mac moves, to his right, he loses vision on that linebacker, and you can see better from the other angle, I think, of he's blocked out in terms of being able to see. And that happens at times, especially with those big guys up front. Like when he has this move that's really tough to the right and he's looking back across the field trying to find somebody, see the play action, and then he feels that guy and he moves really hard to his right. Right here, you can see 59's behind 92. And his vision, Mac Jones does a really good job right here of keeping his eyes downfield. But what happens is because he's late to that middle and he's just reacting to the broken off route, it goes back to the old adage, right? Try not to throw late over the middle. And this is not necessarily him just making a terrible decision. It's just he didn't see 59 at all. And it looks a lot worse because those guys, those linebackers are just reading the quarterback in this zone defense. They have eyes on quarterback and trying to anticipate where he's going. So in this case, it's either he's got to throw that ball quicker or he's got to get the ball down to Jonnu Smith in the flat or there's back over the ball.
So I would just want to go back to one thing you said, which was this play's dead. We got fooled, essentially, is how you put it. So would that be one of those instances where you might get to the line and say, this is a call and run play, but I know post wheel ain't going to work against cover 2. Is that an example of what we're talking about when we're saying, hey, he hasn't been given a ton of freedom this preseason? Part of the reason it's looked wonky this preseason is because he hasn't been able to check out of bad plays and bad looks. This would qualify, it sounds like, as a bad look for that particular play that was called.
That would 100% qualify as a bad look for what was being called. And if those conversations take place during the course of a week in which you guys talk about, hey, if we get split safety versus this particular call, because we don't want to run this against split safety, then can we check to a run and just run the ball? Right. And that's something that usually those conversations take place. And this is probably a learning opportunity too for Matt Patricia, for Mac Jones to say, hey, look, if I double cadence here and we get that too high shell against this particular, we don't want to run it versus too high. So we'll just run the football, live to fight another day. Or, sometimes you do, like I said, you get up to the line of scrimmage, you think that the safety is going to come down, and all of a sudden they go split safety. You have to protect the ball. It's 1st and 10. You're past midfield, throw the ball away, hit the check down quick, and move on to the next play and just say they got us on that play.
Okay, so now I have another play here, which may I think encourage some people. It may not in other respects. And the reason I say it may be encouraging is because this is an example of Mac Jones, I believe, changing some things at the line of scrimmage and the result of the play being successful. But I want to go over number one, just the action that you see from Mac Jones. This is a 1st and 10 play. It's in the second quarter. This is where they were driving the ball a little bit. They're going 4 wide, 5 wide. This is one of those plays where you've gone 5 wide. They split out Ramondre Stevenson from the backfield. They split him out wide. But I want to talk to you about the communication at the line and the adjustments that he's making at the line, because it's pretty clear to me that he is adjusting some things. So I want to show this to you and just get your thoughts, and then I'll show you why this might not be the best idea in the world right now. And it makes me wonder if everyone is prepared for these adjustments at the line of scrimmage. But first, we see him at the line of scrimmage here, Matt, and it looks like I don't know if you can tell what he's doing there.
He's definitely signaling out to the slot. I mean, the three receiver side. So he's tapping his head right here. And as if you looked at it from pre-snap too, so immediately they motioned the halfback outside to empty, right? And who ran with them? Immediately that linebacker ran with him. He knows it's man coverage. It's clear as day. It's some kind of man coverage, and it looks like it's one funnel in this case. And what I mean by that is the safety right there, number 40, is it 44?
Yep.
And the linebacker on the inside, they're funneling Hunter Henry right there. So if he goes inside, the linebacker on the inside will take him over, and that guy will become like just a hole player. And then if he goes vertically, that 44 will carry him, and that other guy will become the hole player, and he'll get freed up, right? So it's a form of one funnel, and this is just a form of cover one man coverage. So when he sees this and he sees the pre-snap read, he looks out and signals. So what he signals outside, and this is a pure man beater, and this is what I love about it, he recognizes it's man coverage. He has an inside fade, right? So that slot is running that fade route, and that's an option to go throw that at any time that you think he wins. You can throw that right now. You can see him. But he doesn't really go, but you can throw that ball right now. Then he's got on the outside what we call the dart, or a one-step slant. And that's another quick hitter that he can get the ball. And I'm talking about down on the on the bottom part of the field. Right.
Yeah. So that's the combination.
That's the combination
with the fade.
The one step slant down here, and then you've got the fade by the slot. So you can take a shot right now. It's a great man beater because you've got all that space out there to work to give him an opportunity, right? So you can throw that ball up and let him go get it. Or if you don't like him, say you don't like the separation, you come right into your vision is that one-step slant that is a catch. He breaks one tackle. He's through the defense. And then from there, you've got Hunter Henry running the deep crossing route up top, right? Again, it's almost like a progression here versus man, and you can pick your poison. And then up top, you could tell also, I'm going back a little bit, but he also signals to the slot up top, but I don't think Devontae Parker got this one because
so that's what I wanted to ask you. So I'll just go back to for our YouTube viewers, back to the end zone view here. He's doing something. It looks like he's shaking maracas or something over his head. Okay. And so whatever the call is for that, Matt gave us the combination there. So it's the slot from the inside and it's the slant from the boundary receiver there. Then on the other side, we're going to see it right here. He goes and it's like he's trying to tickle his own armpit or something with his right hand.
He's doing something there. He's either touching his armpit, he's touching his ribs, doing something. So again, that's a pure indication to me that he's signaling something to the right side of the formation, so the Devontae Parker into the running back out there. Because again, the last thing you want to see is Devontae running vertically, which he does on this play. So he does not get the call. Because if he's running vertically and you've got a deep crossing route, now you've got two guys in the same area. It's not what you're looking for. It's not what. So I'm guessing Mac Jones tried to signal something out there. Probably give Devontae an option or something like that. Let the running back run that corner off so that window opens up for that deep crossing route.
So here's the best indicator. You understand football. I do not at nearly anywhere approaching the same level, but I do understand when a guy, and this is, hopefully people can see this, I'll zoom in a little bit. Devontae Parker, as soon as he gets that signal from Mac Jones, he looks at Mac, and I think he looks at Stevenson too, and he's got his palms raised to the sky like, what the hell was that?
Exactly.
And he clearly, as he's running this route, has no idea what he's supposed to do. So he's just trying to get off the line, and he just starts running, and he's like, I don't know what that was.
Right. And then Hunter Henry just kind of comes over and he just stops his route and he goes, I didn't know what to, he still doesn't know. He's like, I still don't know what's going on right now. So, and that's the big part about this offense too, is when you get to that level to where you've got a quarterback signaling and making those type of adjustments at the line of scrimmage, you have to always be so on top and aware that at any given point that we can signal out and change the route pattern. And you have to be on top of that, because otherwise, as you just saw, the spacing, the distribution of the route pattern, everything that's going on can be completely messed up just based on one guy not getting a signal.
Well, and they ended up, it's sort of lucky for them. It worked. And I don't know, it's just a preseason game, but it's sort of lucky for them. It worked out the way it did, because Mac Jones ends up rolling to his right and making a great throw on the run, right on the face mask of Hunter Henry. It's a 16-yard gain. It's one of their best plays of the night. But because Devontae Parker doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing there, he almost runs right into Hunter Henry. He makes it a more crowded throw than it really needed to be. And so that, to me, is the issue, right? It's great. In my opinion, it's great for Mac Jones to have more freedom at the line. That to me is one of his strengths. I think it's one of the reasons they were interested in him in the draft in the first place. This guy's going to be able to get us into good plays. He's going to be able to use his brain to help us win games. Doesn't have the strongest arm, maybe. He's clearly not one of the best athletes at that position, but he has all this other stuff that he can do to help us. So let him use his strength is my opinion on it. So that's great. If everybody else can't pick up what he's putting down at the line of scrimmage, you could run into some problems, and it could get ugly fast, because all it takes is one guy just not knowing what he's supposed to do for a play to get completely blown up.
Right, and that's the big part of it, is that's what you want Mac Jones to be able to do. His processing, his ability to see defense, understand what he's looking at prior to the snap and getting into the right call. Look, that's all a strength of what Mac Jones's game is about. And so the more that he can do that, and the more accustomed that these wide receivers believe that they're going to have to understand how and when this is going to take place and understand the signals, then they've got to be on top of it too, because it's just going to help this offense be more productive on a consistent basis, because Mac Jones will be able to get them in the right calls. But again, if one guy doesn't get it, especially in that route, they lucked into that route, and Mac Jones made a great throw on the run to Hunter Henry, and it all worked out, looked great. But at the end of the day, you've got two guys running in the same area right at each other, and you just can't play and be successful on a consistent basis if that's happening and you're having mental errors like that on the field. And so they've got to tighten up that aspect if they want to get to the level of execution offensively that they want to be at come season.
Yeah, I think it just, even though the result of that play was what it was, 16-yard gain, great. I think it's going to take them some time for everybody to get up to speed to where guys like Mac Jones or David Andrews, David Andrews isn't out there confused, generally speaking.
Right.
That's, again, one of the strengths of his game. He's going to be able to think through the game more quickly than a lot of other people. But it's everybody else. It's the new receivers. It's the receivers that maybe have even been here, but they're getting used to a new system. It's the offensive linemen that might be new to the deal that have to make sure that they're on their P's and Q's starting in 10 days here. We're recording this September 1. They've got a game September 11th. So I don't know. Should we be, I guess, just to wrap this up, Matt, do you think we should be expecting a lot of changes at the line from Mac Jones? Like, I think this is encouraging for fans, because they look at Matt Patricia and Joe Judge and they say, these guys might be great football coaches. They might be great assistants, but we know they don't have a ton of experience on the offensive side. So the more power to make decisions that's put in Mac Jones's hands, I think for fans, they look at that and they say, the more, the better. But do you think we will see a lot of this adjustment stuff at the line when they're down in Miami?
Again, when I look at just in general, when you're putting together a call sheet, right? You have your base runs that you can run versus anything. Then you have your check with me runs. You're running it off of a down safety. You're running it off of a 3 technique versus a 1 technique, or we want to run this specific run toward this look, right? So you have that. Then when you have your pass game, you have plays that look split field reads versus single high coverage, you're going to the right, versus 2 high coverage, you're going to the left. You have progression reads that really, no matter what coverage you get, you're going through your progression and you might have to get to your check down. And so throughout the course of a game, there's not always the opportunity for you to come up to the line of scrimmage and get yourself in the right play. And that's a lot to put on any quarterback, even a quarterback that's been in, even Tom Brady, for as long as he's played the game, to go up to line of scrimmage every single play and get them into the right play call, right? So you have to understand when this takes place, it'll probably be on 3rd down, situational football, maybe on a 1st down call where they spread them out, where you have the ability to look at the defense, double cadence, and then all of a sudden, let's get ourselves into the right play call here. Let's get ourselves in the right route pattern so that we can be successful. So it's not going to happen all, but I think the more that they can do it and put themselves in that position, and Mac Jones makes the correct decision in that they'll have a lot of success doing it. But to realistically say that they're going to sit there all game and have Mac Jones just go and function at the line of scrimmage and make the right call, I don't think that that's fair to say, not only offensively, but also for Mac Jones.
All right, there's Matt Cassel. That was a lot of fun. I really like learning some football from you.
Love football.
It turns out watching football with an NFL quarterback can be a really enjoyable experience.
It is enjoyable, and I love breaking down film with you, buddy. And I love the fact that you always want to dive a little bit deeper, because it means a lot when you actually look at the film and you understand what's kind of going on and what kind of stuff you're looking at.
I think it helps, especially in a situation like this where, we try to combine the two, right? Where we're watching the games and we try to watch them as closely as we can, but we also have this great opportunity, which most fans don't, of being able to talk to people that are on the team and that, might be willing to share some things with us occasionally in terms of how things are going. And so if we can look at it and say, that wasn't a great look, in a perfect world, they might have liked to change out of that look, but they're not really doing that this summer. And then, there's an instance where they actually did change some stuff around and it worked out, but didn't look like everybody else was ready for that. So, that's just kind of where they are right now. I think that's those 2 plays that we got to hear and learn a lot about from you, I think are a good illustration of where this offense is right now. So thank you, my friend. You're bringing so much value to the table all the time for us, and we're looking forward to spending the 2022 season with you, man.
Gonna have a blast, brother.
All right. We love Cassel. We're going to be talking to him all year on NBC Sports Boston. We'll have him on TV. We'll have him on the pod. It is just such an incredible resource for us. Somebody who not only knows as much football as he does, but somebody who knows as much Patriots football and what they typically are asking of. And I know the system's changed and I know the offense is new now, but there will be plenty that he's able to help us break down, as he always is, as the year goes along here. All right, so that'll do it for this week's edition of Next Pats. Thanks so much, guys. This is always a lot of fun. This feels like the start of the season, of course, but on the other hand, it is the end of something that we really love to do here on this podcast in particular, which is project out, watch how this team comes together, watch how this team gets built. And it's never ending. So we will always talk about it. We will talk about it as the season's going on and the games come more into focus. But between the draft and free agency and talking about players like Trey Nixon and getting to interview them and having those interviews here on this podcast and just seeing his road now where he's been released, somebody who looked like he might make the team not all that long ago, but now he's back on the practice squad. And he has an opportunity, and there's this road now for him and others to make something of their careers. Is it a long shot? It is. But the reason it's fun talking about these guys is because so many of these long shots end up panning out, especially here in New England. We know whether it's Malcolm Butler or David Andrews or Jonathan Jones or any number of guys, there have been so many fun stories to track over the years. And we try to give you the origin story, so to speak, with some of these guys, at least how their careers originate in New England. So thanks for following along pre-draft, during the draft, free agency, during camp. It's been an absolute blast, but of course we will continue to hammer you with Next Pats episodes as the season rolls along. And we're starting next week with one of our favorite guests. And I don't want to give too much away, but this is someone we've had on before, someone who's going to be able to give us insight into certain elements of this Patriots offense, unlike really anyone else that we have access to. So make sure you're listening to next week's pod because we've got a great guest. It'll be a great episode, and it'll help you get ready for week 1. Thanks again for listening today, guys. We'll talk to you very soon.